Okay, great. So the brand discovery process, we can get to the next slide. It sounds very overwhelming. How am I going to uncover your brand? And Reach is considered the global leader in personal branding, and my co-author and partner, William Maruda, developed, a really specific process for uncovering, communicating, and managing your personal brand. The process is, the steps in the process, 3 steps: extract, express, exude. All of them begin with EX because even though your brand is authentic to who you are and comes from you, your brand is really external. It's held in the hearts and minds of others. And this process is actually outlined in Career Distinction. And there's a corresponding free workbook that comes with the book, and all the exercises for going through the process you can actually do in a self-paced way by downloading that workbook. It's careerdistinction.com/workbook. So there's a resource for you so that you can get access right away to the process, and it's not so overwhelming.
Right.
So next slide. So really what you're trying to do in the brand discovery process is really, get this self-awareness, right? Understanding who you are, understanding, who your target audience is, and then, once you hone in on a target audience, you're in a better position to understand who your peers and competitors are, and your brand actually lies at the intersection of these 3 things, and you really can't discover your brand without really looking at all 3 of these areas, and now we'll dive in more closely into each of the 3. So on the next slide, let's start with you. And when you're doing the internal work, you first want to really think about who you are from an internal perspective, but then you also have to marry that up with what other people who know you well are saying about you. So on the next slide, one of the first things that you can look at internally is really thinking about your goals, long-term goals. What's the 50,000-foot view? What do you want to have people say about you when you die? When do you want to retire? All of these long-term goals really help to give your brand direction so that, all of your efforts are going to, point your brand toward your goals. And then on the next slide, we also get into what we call VPs, which is your vision, your purpose, your values, and your passions. And we have exercises in each of these areas. And, a lot of people struggle with, vision and think, oh, gosh, how am I going to come up with my vision for the world? But really, when you think about this broader vision and how, and your purpose in achieving that vision, it's going to cause you to really think bigger. And what I found in working with clients around vision is that we tend to grow into our vision, right? We don't necessarily see, what little old me could do about, improving education or, world peace or solving the global energy crisis. But over time, we really understand that we could have an impact in some of these larger issues that have meaning to us. So then on the next slide, now we marry up all that internal work that we're doing with external perceptions. We have a formal tool for doing this, which I'll tell you about in a second. But really, you want to listen to what other people say about you. When you're being introduced to others, they'll say, oh, meet Sally. Sally's the most organized person on the planet. You want something done, you've got to connect with Sally, right? And these external perceptions, we call them brand attributes. And when you want to think about your brand attributes in terms of emotional brand attributes and rational brand attributes. So a rational brand attribute, think of that as the table stakes that get you into the game. It's what everybody else has to have at a minimum in order to be considered for the opportunity. And so, if you're an accountant, a rational brand attribute might be, ethical or dependable, right? You wouldn't want an accountant who's not dependable or ethical. And, so those are the attributes that would really be a part of the job description. Now, layered on top of that is an emotional brand attribute. And think of an emotional brand attribute as a tipping point, right? It tips the scales in favor of us. It causes people to hire us over our peers and competitors. It's what differentiates us. Emotional brand attributes cause people to love us, okay? And if you go to the next slide, so we have this tool called 360 Reach, which is the world's first online personal brand assessment, and it actually allows you to survey anyone in your life who knows you well, and really to find out what brand attributes they associate with you. What are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and so forth. And it's based on corporate brand assessments, and it's applied to people. And so you get access to this tool, and I highly recommend the premium version of the tool because then you get a report. So it's about $50 for this tool, and it's going to be probably the best money you've ever spent in terms of really getting incredible input that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. It's definitely a scary process to open yourself up to this feedback, but I've never had anyone ever regret doing it. And it's such rich data for your brand. And when you're doing this the first time, you're really getting a baseline of where your reputation stands right now in the marketplace. And really the word reputation is synonymous with your personal brand. And then you can determine how you want to be known. And then you could do this again in a year and really see how you have affected the perception of your brand. So it's a tool that you can actually keep on using over time to sort of measure your progress, very, very tangibly. Now, as you may have read on the typepad website, I'm actually giving away, as part of this webinar, two premium access to 360 Reach and a little bit of help around that report, so kind of a mini personal branding consultation, and we'll have a drawing for those two at the end of the call. So glad you're here, and good luck with that.
And I did want to say the Reach tool is really fantastic. I went through it about a year ago, and it's really, really good stuff. Very, very useful.
Thanks. And you really want to survey anyone in your life who knows you well. And what's neat about this is versus some other 360s that you might have done, internally, at a company, is that you can survey friends and family in addition to colleagues. And so you can really see how your brand perception is sort of inside and outside of work as well. So that is the external perceptions. And on the next slide, we'll get into target audience. And I find in working with my clients, particularly entrepreneurs, that target audience is one of the most difficult concepts in the personal branding process, and but it's one of the most necessary. I would guess that all of you on the call do not have the budget of Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola's target audience is the world, and we certainly can't try with the budgets that we have as small business owners to reach the whole entire world with our message. And so target audience is really critical for marketing spend, the marketing budget, but it's also really critical because personal branding is not really about being famous. It's not about having everybody in the world know who you are. It's really about being selectively famous. You only really are trying to be known to your ideal clients, right? The people who really need to know who you are. So really having a solid understanding of your target audience from a psychographic and a demographic point of view, and knowing who influences them is really important. And of course, this also comes into play, of course, when you're writing your blog, because you really want to write blog posts that speak specifically to your target audience, right?